Okay, welcome back to Premier League Dad. How are we all doing? Listen, it's a huge game week in the Premier League this week, isn't it? It's an absolutely massive game week. Final game week before the big international break. And this is usually, historically, this is usually a game week where teams make changes, right? This is a game week where teams, clubs who have maybe started poorly, clubs who, again, may be considering a change in manager. They are the teams where typically they might just consider making a change in these next couple of weeks. So I am really, really intrigued to see exactly how it all pans out over the next couple of weeks. But we've got 10 games, 10 interesting fixtures. If you're on TikTok, you can already see what they look like. These are my predictions for the 10 fixtures this weekend, but I'm going to go through them on YouTube and we'll go through them. So let's get started. So first off is Chelsea and Fulham. So Chelsea-Fulham, I've got to be honest, I'm not mad keen on Chelsea at the minute. In terms of their attack, it's absolutely fantastic. Chelsea's attack, absolutely brilliant. Don't think anyone would doubt it at all. Started really, really well against West Ham. However, I think it's also probably fair to say that they've not been terrific in defence. They conceded, what was it? Nearly 3 against West Ham last week. They were 5-1 winners, obviously, and that looked brilliant on paper, but West Ham take the lead through a goal that I think was pretty poor from Chelsea's point of view. I think Maresca would have been really concerned by that. So Chelsea concede first. They get it back. They concede again, but it's ruled out for offside. Chelsea then plough through West Ham, and they very nearly concede a third through Callum Wilson. So Chelsea could have conceded 3. Let's let that settle in. Chelsea could have conceded 3 very, very plausibly to perhaps the worst team in the league this season. And that has to be really, really alarming for Enzo Maresca. So I do fancy Fulham. Fulham, by the way, Fulham did win here last year. Fulham got a win at Stamford Bridge, and it's a West London derby. Look, it's a derby. Fulham twice now in the first 2 game weeks they've come from behind to nick a point. 1-1 against Brighton. They obviously pinched a late winner. A late equaliser at the Amex, and then a late equaliser again last week at Craven Cottage against United. So yeah, Liam, what's with the new angle? It is literally just because I'm doing it this way on TikTok with the predictions, but it's a new thing. I'm trying a new thing. So yeah, Chelsea, I think, aren't going to win this one. I'm going for a draw. I've gone for a draw, and I've gone for a high-scoring one. I think Chelsea are vulnerable defensively, but they also are going to pose dangers in attack. So I have gone for 2-2. Chelsea 2, Fulham 2. That is my first prediction for game week 3 for Chelsea and Fulham. So let me know what you think in the comments on that one, but I've gone for Chelsea 2, Fulham 2. Next up, Manchester United against Burnley. Now, this one's a little bit of an intriguing one, isn't it? Let's be honest, Manchester United didn't do great against Grimsby in midweek. They weren't great at Craven Cottage either. It also probably has to be said they weren't fantastic. So I've kind of ummed and ahed about this one because I think Manchester United have obviously got ability. They've got, they had a good start against Arsenal. It felt like they could hurt Arsenal at different points, and I'm sure they'll cause Burnley problems. There'll be a sting in the tail for Burnley if they're not careful. But Burnley were really, really good against Sunderland. Defensively, we said that about Burnley when they were coming up into the Premier League. They were always going to be a really, really tough side to beat. Scott Parker's made them quite defensively stubborn, so I thought Burnley would be a difficult one. And they played really well against Sunderland. They limited Sunderland to very few chances last week at Turf Moor, and I've got a horrible, sneaky feeling that United are going to not quite turn up. Burnley going to pinch a point, and Amarim's going to get sacked or resign. Well, he won't get sacked, but I think he might resign. And that is what I've gone for in this one. I've gone for Manchester United 1, Burnley 1 for this one. It is an look again. It's either gonna. I don't think Burnley win, but I think Burnley have absolutely got enough to pinch a point at Old Trafford. Absolutely, they've got enough to pinch a point, and Yeah, Esteve at the back was really, really solid last week. Even Dubravka, Dubravka pulled off a couple of saves, so it's not beyond the realms of possibility that Burnley can pinch something. I think a few United fans are certainly concerned with this one. There's other teams I think they'd prefer to play over Burnley this weekend. They'd prefer to play maybe teams that would open up a little bit and would have a go at them. A Brighton or even a Newcastle or someone like that, someone who would open up and give them chances. I think Burnley will be really, really rigid and they'll defend deep. And we saw, last week, Jadon Anthony, you can pinch him on the counter-attack. United are going to have to be very, very careful. Grimsby opened them up twice. It'd be a brave man who wouldn't bet against Burnley to pinch something. So that's what I've gone for. I've gone for Manchester United 1, Burnley 1. Next up, so these are your Saturday 3 o'clocks, by the way. Chelsea, Fulham is your early Saturday 12:30 kickoff. We'll be live for that on this channel, by the way. We're doing watch-alongs on this channel all this weekend. So we're live for Chelsea, Fulham. Man United, Burnley is a Saturday 3 o'clock. We've also got Spurs, Bournemouth, which is the next one that we're going to do. Spurs, Bournemouth, Saturday 3 o'clock. And we watched Bournemouth in midweek on this channel. I watched them against Brentford. Again, Brentford. I'm not going to talk about Brentford just yet, but Bournemouth were absolutely dreadful in that game. And absolutely dreadful. They were awful. And I just can't get away from the fact that they've let so many go in defence. They've not really looked all that solid. And they've had to bring a lot of new signings in. They took quite a few of them signings off at half-time. They started them in midweek against Brentford in the Cup, and they took them off. Brentford, actually, were the better team pretty much throughout from the start. And when I looked at the lineups, I thought that was going to be completely the opposite case. But Doak got dragged off at half-time, and Diakite got dragged off at half-time. So both of those just not quite at the races. I think Adley, was quite poor on his debut, and I just feel like Bournemouth need a bit of time for those new players to settle in. So, yeah, for me, I think Bournemouth are a work in progress. They've got a wonderful manager, absolutely fantastic manager, but I'm looking at it and I'm thinking Spurs away is going to be a really tough one for them. They're buoyant at the minute, Spurs. Xavi Simon's just coming in. They're looking terrific under Thomas Frank. So, I am thinking it's going to be a Spurs win, and I have gone for that this weekend. I've gone for Spurs to win relatively comfortably, I will say. And it's 2-0. Spurs 2, Bournemouth 0 at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. That's my next 3 o'clock prediction. So, on to the next one is going to be Sunderland against Brentford. Brentford, who we've just been speaking about, of course. I feel like Sunderland are going to have to be very, very good at home this season because their away form, obviously last week at Turf Moor, they were so so poor. And one of the challenges for Sunderland is they won't have Dan Ballard. They really won't have Dan Ballard this week, I don't think. He went off, forced off last week against Burnley, and that's a big old loss at the back. They seem to fall apart without him at the back last week. So again, I'm going for Brentford to do what they did so well in the Cup. I think the first goal is going to be really crucial for Sunderland. Stadium of Light, a really tricky place to go. Thiago's looking really good for Brentford. And listen, I said this to you all. I said this. Honestly, I feel like I'm banging my head against a brick wall. Everyone was saying to me that Brentford were going to go down at the start of the season. Keith Andrews coming in. He's going to be shocking. They're going to go down. They're going to go down. And it's just absolutely not going to happen. I said to him from the off, there's no way at all Brentford are going down with the players they've got. And I have gone for Brentford to pinch something at the Stadium of Light. I think Sunderland can give them a really good game. There was enough in that first game against West Ham that I think Sunderland will stay up. Or at least give it a bloody good go. I think they'll have a really good fight. But Brentford won't go down. I'm less concerned about Brentford than I am Sunderland. And I think Brentford will get a point. So I've gone for Sunderland 1, Brentford 1. That's my prediction in the 3 o'clock. Not the final 3 o'clock, because the final 3 o'clock is Wolves against Everton. Now, Wolves against Everton, this one is one where I think the first goal is going to be important. I'm already getting stick on TikTok here for putting Wolves to win this one. So, if you look at Wolves in midweek against West Ham, they They go behind twice, they come back and win it 3-2. Jorgen Strand-Larsen came off the bench in that one, and he won it for him. He's not going to play. Now, this is really, really important. Newcastle have given Nick Voltemade the number 27 shirt. They have left Jorgen Strand-Larsen free to take the number 9 shirt at St James's Park. The number 9 shirt remains vacant. So Jorgen Strand-Larsen, I think, if he's being left out of this one, it's almost certainly because Wolves believe he will go to Newcastle before the end of that window. And given that's the case, I think we're going to see a pretty dour 3 o'clock kickoff at Molineux. Now, you might be surprised to know that's the game we're watching tomorrow. We're watching that. We're watching Wolves against Everton, 3 o'clock. Tomorrow, live on the channel, we'll be watching it on here, live watch along if you want to join us. I do think that one's going to be the most boring out of all the 3 o'clocks, but I think it's going to be an interesting one. Everton still really short of quality up front. Really, really short of quality. They were really quite tested against Mansfield in midweek. They ended up winning it 2-0, but they were 0-0 at half-time. I was speaking to a number of Evertonians who were telling me that Tierno Barry just looks miles off it. Beto, David Moyes has been very critical of him throughout the early part of this season. And they've just looked really, really short of quality in attack, Everton. They were quite fortunate against Brighton last week. Again, Everton fans would have admitted this themselves. At half-time, they were quite fortunate to be 1-0 up. Brighton had 3 or 4 chances against them and should have put them to the sword. Missed a couple of absolute sitters and just didn't. Now, Everton fully deserved the win. Second half, Brighton were terrible. And that, I think, is what's going to lead us to a game where the first goal is incredibly important. It is just going to boil down to who nicks that first goal. I think Wolves are going to look at the performance against West Ham in midweek and go, we conceded 2, wasn't great, let's tighten it up at the back. They're going to have to put someone up front who can try and create a bit of bother if Jorgen Strand-Larsen isn't there. They have got some players up there who can hurt Everton, but I just feel like it's going to boil down to first goal ends up taking it. And I think, again, Everton's performance at Leeds, the away performance was really, really terrible. They were so poor at Leeds. And again, Evertonians said this themselves, that it was one of the worst performances that I think Baz at Toffee TV, shout out to Baz at Toffee TV, he said I think it was one of the worst Everton performances he'd seen in that first half in years. It was that bad. So I've gone for Wolves 1, Everton 0. I fancy Wolves to take it. Let me know what you think. And then we're on to the half-5 on Saturday. Half-5 on Saturday is Leeds against Newcastle at Ellen Road. Now, the mood's lifting at Newcastle, isn't it? The mood is lifting. Big performance against Liverpool last week for Newcastle. Probably quite unlucky to come away from it without anything at all, but played really well. No Anthony Gordon, of course. It might well be that Tonali's out. It may even be that Joe Linton's out of this one. So they're going to be short. But I think Jacob Ramsey starts. He is very, very eager to impress. So it's going to be interesting to see exactly how Jacob Ramsey fares in his full debut for Newcastle. It might even be that Will Osula gets a game. But however you dress that Newcastle attack up, if it's Murphy, Barnes, Osula, I just can't see Leeds scoring. Leeds have got a major problem with scoring. A major problem with scoring. It's going to be a long old season for them. If you watch them against Sheffield Wednesday in the Cup in midweek, Dominic Calvert-Lewin couldn't hit a barn door. Could not hit a barn door. They were shocking. Absolutely shocking. They got beat by arguably the worst side in the Championship this season, or one of certainly, and yeah, really struggled on penalties in the end and went out. So I feel like Leeds might just... Well, Leeds are going to lose against Newcastle. I'm relatively confident of that. I don't know if it's necessarily going to be a convincing Newcastle victory, but I will go for a Newcastle win. I've gone for Leeds 0, Newcastle 2. And that's the 5:30. Then we're on to the Sunday's games. So first up, it's Brighton against City. Now these are the two Sunday 2 o'clock kickoffs. Brighton against City, and then you've got Forest against West Ham. So Brighton against City at the Amex. Brighton was so poor against Everton last week, weren't they? So poor. I can't tell you how disappointing it was for them to take off Baleba at half-time. Obviously, it feels like nothing's quite right there for Brighton and Baleba. Herzler pulled him off at half-time. Well, that sounds bad. he took him off at half-time. And Brighton just couldn't take the chances. Now, Yankuba Minter caused Everton a lot of problems down that right-hand side. I think he could cause City some problems. Because on the left-hand side, they're probably not going to have Aït-Nouri, are they? Either way, I think Minter will certainly cause issues for him. It wouldn't even surprise me if Brighton took the lead in this one. Brighton have not got a bad record against City at the Amex, and I think it might well be that Brighton score first, but City's quality will tell in the end. So that's what I'm going for. I think Manchester City were all over the place last week against Spurs, but I think that was more due to Spurs' fantastic performance rather than City being absolutely woeful and all over the place. City had some errors at the back, don't get me wrong, but Spurs pressed amazingly well. Absolutely brilliant. Totally symptomatic of Thomas Frank's side. And I think it's going to be a City win. I think City's quality just tells in the end. So I have gone for Brighton 1, City 3. That's my first prediction of Sunday's games. Now, next up we have Nottingham Forest against West Ham. Now, this is the only game this weekend, the only one out of all 10 fixtures that I am absolutely certain of the outcome. And I think it results in Graham Potter losing his job. I don't like that. You don't want to predict anyone losing the job, but I just can't see any other outcome, sadly. They're all over the place, West Ham. They were really, really poor defensively. It's not a nice time to be a Hammer, is it? Let's be honest. It's really not a nice time to be a Hammer. They're really, really struggling in every sense. They don't like the manager. They don't like the players. They're shouting at Jared Bowen on the pitch after going out of the cup in midweek. And Jared Bowen's maybe been the one shining light in West Ham's, the last 10 years at West Ham. So if they're shouting at him, if they're shouting at the captain, it's not a good time. And it just feels like it's all pointing to Graham Potter leaving the club over the next couple of weeks before the international break ends. I imagine that's what we see. So I do think it's going to be a Forest win. Forest have got a lot of new signings who we might see starting in this one. Maybe Callum Wendell comes in, maybe McAtee. There's quite a few new players, new faces at Forest. And we had someone in the chat earlier, funnily enough, who was talking about maybe Chris Wood captaining him for the FPL this weekend. Because Chris Wood, decent record against West Ham, decent record at the City ground, already scored a couple there this season. Against Brentford, wasn't it, on the opening day? So it wouldn't be a surprise at all if West Ham were beaten quite convincingly here. But I have gone for Forest to win 2-0. Forest 2, West Ham 0. The end of Graham Potter, I think. Sadly. But yes, a good manager, Graham Potter. It's just not been a good fit for him at West Ham. And I think we knew that within a couple of months of him starting. So, yeah, Forest, West Ham, that's the only one out of those 10 that I am absolutely certain on. Now, big game. The big game maybe in this game week. Liverpool against Arsenal. Maybe the two favourites for the title. Not for me, in my opinion. I still think City finish above Arsenal this season, but Liverpool and Arsenal were the top two last season, and it wouldn't be surprising if they are the top two again this season in some order. I think Arsenal weren't particularly convincing in either of their games this season. Again, the scoreline flattered them, I thought, against Leeds, in the second half in particular, but against Leeds for the first half hour, we had Arsenal fans on the chat here saying, we look all over the place here. It takes a set piece, it takes a scrappy set piece in both games to break the deadlock. But Arsenal weren't convincing at all in those certainly the opening half hour of Leeds. Man United very easily could have pinched a point, if not more. And yeah, Arsenal not particularly looking convincing. Now, you could say, on the other hand, I would say that Liverpool probably aren't looking all that convincing themselves. And that's a very, very fair assessment. It could go either way. Again, the first goal is very important. But I think the difference we've got with what I've learned from Liverpool, what I've learned from looking at Arsenal this season, is that Liverpool, it just feels like we've got that resilience factor of champions. We've been 2-0 up, and we've dragged it back to 2-2 somehow. We threw it away against Bournemouth, and then we've won it again, 4-2 at the end. We've done the exact same thing against Newcastle. 2-0 up against Newcastle, threw it away, 2-2. Most teams, I think, in that position collapse. Most teams fall apart. Liverpool didn't. And that's the one. We haven't seen any credit given to Liverpool for that, by the way. It's all been about Liverpool's defence and how shaky Liverpool look, how dreadful Liverpool look. And that's again, entirely reasonable, entirely fine. But I think there needs to be a level of credit given to Liverpool for just how well they have bounced back from those two setbacks. Admittedly, maybe self-inflicted, but I think the resilience, the mentality is massive. Having Alexis McAllister back in the midfield for this one is massive. Same with Ryan Gravenberch. We saw what a difference he made against Newcastle. We certainly missed him against Bournemouth. He came in and just steadied that ship. I think with Szoboszlai in there, McAllister, Gravenberch, if we can get Wirtz again floating around the front three, I think Liverpool will win this one. So it's going to be I wouldn't be surprised if it's a draw. I would not be surprised if it's a draw. Arsenal do not have a very good record at Anfield. It needs to be said. Arsenal have got a terrible record at Anfield. In fact, Arsenal have got a pretty terrible record against title rivals in general. They haven't won at the Etihad. They haven't won at Liverpool for many, many years. In fact, they've been known to celebrate draws at the Etihad. You know, we've seen that, haven't we? We've seen them clapping. Yes, get in there. We've got a draw. At some point, if Arsenal want to be taken seriously as title contenders, they are going to have to go and win at one of these places. They're going to have to go and win at one of these places. And if Arsenal win at Anfield, then yes, it'll turn some heads. If they can. But I don't think they will. So I'm back in Liverpool. I have gone for Liverpool 2, Arsenal 1. That's what I'm going for. Liverpool 2, Arsenal 1. And then straight after that, we are live for that one as well, by the way. We're live for Liverpool-Arsenal, of course, on the weekend. And then straight after that, we're live again for the final game of this game week, which is Aston Villa against Palace. What a peculiar game to finish on in this game week. But it's Villa against Palace. Two sides who are struggling. It's probably fair to say, isn't it? It's probably fair to say Aston Villa, not great. They haven't scored a goal this season, Villa. They haven't scored a goal. They were 0-0 at home against Newcastle. Obviously, they had Konza sent off. Didn't really lay a glove on Newcastle. Same again against Brentford last week. They go to the G-Tech and Brentford beat them 1-0. Surprised quite a few, that one. But Villa do look a little bit shell-shocked. They look a little bit blunt in attack. No John Duran, no Sentio, no Rashford. You know, a lot of players who made a big difference for them in the early part of last season, just not there now. Ollie Watkins, it feels like he's having to do a lot on his own. And there's rumours today, by the way, that Morgan Rogers is going to be making a move to Liverpool before the end of the transfer window. How true that is, we don't know. It's just a rumour. But if they lost Morgan Rogers, I think we could see Villa really fall out of that top 6, top 7 and maybe back into mid-table again. They've not really handled the last couple of summers particularly well. Last summer was a dreadful summer for Villa. They got it all wrong. They spent close to 200 million last summer and the signings were objectively terrible. So don't let any Villa fan tell you that it's PSR, it's financial fair play that's restricting us. Well, hang on a minute. Just point to the 200 million they spent last year and they got it wrong. So, yeah, Villa not particularly strong last year. And I think that's going to play a part in how they get on this year, as you'd expect. The same with Palace. Look, Palace probably aren't going to have Mark Gay this weekend. Apparently, they're very close to agreeing a deal with Toulouse for the replacement for Mark Gay. Mark Gay set to join Liverpool. I just wonder whether or not he plays a part. Given it's the final game of the game week, it's the 31st of August. The transfer window will be slamming shut 24 to 48 hours later. There won't be a lot of time. So I don't think Gay plays a part in this one. And to lose the captain at Villa Park, not great, especially after they've lost Eze as well. They have signed Yeremy Pino, of course, today. That's going to be incredible. I wonder if the Yeremy Pino can play any part at Villa Park. That'll be huge for him. But I have gone for, in this one, 1-1. I think Villa get their first goal of the season. I think Palace have got enough to score, but they were incredibly poor against Fredrikstad. We watched that last night on the channel, didn't we? We watched that really, really poor Fredrikstad against Palace game. Fredrikstad probably could have pinched it in the end and knocked Palace out of Europe. But Palace are just riding that wave at the moment. They've won the FA Cup. They won the Community Shield. It feels like they're putting all their eggs in the European basket. They'll have a wonderful time on that European adventure. But I feel like Oliver Glasner's going to be content to just finish in mid-table in the Premier League again. They're not going to go down. They're not going to challenge the top six. They'll do everything they can to stay in Europe as long as possible, and they may well prioritise Europe. They will do very well to hold on to Oliver Glasner, though. Rumours today again that Oliver Glasner might leave Palace. I don't think he leaves anytime soon. Certainly don't think he leaves before the end of... well, certainly before the next international break anyway. I think he's there for a long while yet, but... You know, I think if a team does decide to sack their manager, whether it be maybe Man United, if Amorim decides to resign, Glasner is one of the favourites to replace him. And yeah, so that's what I'm going for. I have gone for Villa 1, Palace 1, and that is my predictions for game week 3. So Chelsea 2, Fulham 2, West London derby, Fulham to get another point. They've proven to be very hard to beat on the road this season. Man United 1, Burnley 1. Ruben Amorim looks shell-shocked against Grimsby, and I think his Man United side don't quite turn up for him this weekend. Spurs 2, Bournemouth 0. Bournemouth, again, looking really, really poor in midweek in the Cup. Spurs, just incredible against City last week, looking really confident under Thomas Frank. A different team, you might say. Wolves 1, Sunderland 1, Brentford 1. Brentford continuing to look really sharp under Keith Andrews, and Sunderland... home form, really important for them. I think that's going to be 1-1. Wolves 1, Everton 0. Could go either way, that one. I'm expecting a low-scoring game either way. Both teams not particularly strong in attack. Both teams relatively strong in defence. So I would imagine it's going to be a low-scoring one. First goal decisive. I've gone for the home side to nick it 1-0. Then the late kick-off, Leeds 0, Newcastle 2. I'll be live for that one. Newcastle to pinch it. Leeds again really struggling for goals. And on to Sunday's games. Brighton 1, City 3. Brighton to score first, City to pinch it. Nottingham Forest 2, West Ham 0. Graham Potter to leave shortly afterwards. Liverpool 2, Arsenal 1. I think Liverpool just about get the job done. Just about. It's going to be a really good game, that one. I'll be live for it, of course. Aston Villa 1, Palace 1, finishing us off for the game week. Going into a big international break where there'll be lots of changes, and obviously we'll see the confirmed teams for the season, given the transfer window will have slammed shut by that point. I am live in about 10 minutes' time for Birmingham City away at Leicester City in the Championship. If you want to join me, get over to YouTube, Premier League Dad. I will be live, or you can just follow me on this channel right now. I'm going to be live in 10 minutes. So if you want to give us a like, give us a follow, subscribe, all that good stuff, it's always mega appreciated. And I will see you in about 10 minutes' time for Leicester City against Birmingham. Take it easy.